What is going on, my beautiful LARPers and LARPettes? Today we're going to go over the brand new Dan Wesson DWX Compact. So this has been coming about for quite some time now. I think the first time that I seen this one here was at like SHOT Show 2020 or SHOT Show 2021. But since then, it has not been released until now. I think at the time that I post this video is going to be the actual release date of this DWX Compact. But I'm basically going to go over the details on this little guy here and kind of compare it and see how they kind of created this gun, right? I think there's a lot of different firearms that had a lot of influence to make this one here. But before I get into all that, what is my relationship with Dan Wesson or CZ USA? So I went to SHOT Show this year, for the beginning of this year, and I met with the CZ marketing team out there, and they're really great people over there, and they wanted to add me onto their whole list of people to send guns to before their release or upon their release to review, and that's basically it. So they sent me this firearm here a couple weeks ago. I put some rounds through it, and I'm going to go through basically what I found throughout my testing and what I liked and what I didn't like. So CZ sent me this firearm for free. They did not pay me to make this review. They just sent the firearm out. But any other CZs that you're seeing here on the table, like this Shadow 2 or this Accu Shadow here, I did purchase myself. But let's get right into what you're getting when you actually purchase the firearm. So you get this little just zippered felt case here, and it does come with two 15 round magazines, and it also comes with like your manual, and it comes with a lock as well. So starting at the front here, you do get a 4-inch barrel, and this firearm is chambered in 9mm. And if you're looking at the front here, it is nice and flush with the slide, and it also has a reverse crown there too. I think when a firearm has a flush barrel and a reverse crown, it looks very, very nice. So the DWX is a hybrid of a couple of different guns. It's gonna be like a 1911 and a like CZ75 and a CZ PO9 all mixed together, and I'll get into those details as I progress through explaining what's on this gun. You get a nice bright, and I'm guessing it's yellow or greenish, or I might be colorblind, but it looks a little bit yellowish green. So you get a nice bright front sight, but also it is a night sight, and the rear sight is not no night sights on it or anything, but it is blacked out with some serrations that go through it. And if you're looking at the rear sight, it also has this, what they're calling on the side of it, battle hook. So that is basically if you wanted to like rack it off of like a table, or you wanted to rack it off like your clothes, or whatever you needed to tactically do, right? And moving on to the slide, this slide is reminiscent of like a 2011 or like a 1911, more like a 1911. So if you're looking at the styling of it, it looks very 1911-ish from the top, even when it comes down to how like the serrations look on there. So I think this is paying like homage to their Dan Wesson 1911 line. So on the slide, you do get some front serrations and rear serrations. They're not too aggressive. They're nice and sleek with the slide itself, but it's also very grippy when you need to grip it. Also, if you notice on the slide, there is no optic cut. It's just iron sights only. You do get an external extractor, which I think is nice because the external extractor is a little bit easier to pop on and off, and I believe they're a little bit more reliable than the internal extractors that you normally see on like 1911s and stuff like that. Now moving back to the barrel here, it's very reminiscent to the PO9 styling and cutting. It almost looks like it's exactly a PO9 barrel that they put in here. But I'm guessing that was kind of the inspiration that they took for the barrel. And it is also linkless. So on a 1911, like how you see the slide here, like a 1911-ish slide, you would think, okay, they're gonna use a 1911 style barrel where it has that little link that's hanging down there that you kind of stick through this pin here. go ahead and Google it so that way you can see how a 1911 barrel works and functions. But this is a linkless design, so it's a very simplistic design, similar to like the P09s and stuff like that. Now moving on down to the frame. The frame is aluminum, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this on a scale for you so you can see the weight of this whole firearm. Now moving on down to the rail portion, or the dust cover portion here, you're gonna see that there's a lack of, basically you can't put any lights or accessories on here. From my understanding, when I last spoke with them at SHOT Show about this whole thing here, is that there was going to be two different variants of this, right? So they were going to come out with this version here, or they're going to come out with the 1913 style railed version. I believe this is the first one that they're coming out with right now, but don't quote me on it. There is the other one that was shown at SHOT Show, so I highly doubt they will not release that. So who knows when it would be released, if not, if it's probably released now. But this is the one I got in my hands, so I'm just going based off of what's in my hands. When I spoke to CZ, they said that the lack of rail has to do with certain individuals wanting to just have a sleeker gun when it comes to sticking this into your pants, and not having a lot of extra portions that are going to be, I guess, sticking out in the holster. So if you're one of those people, go ahead and drop a comment below if you like that sleek looking style, because CZ, they don't really cater to just the masses. They try to cater to every genre that's out there, right? So if you see on the Shadow 2 and the Accu Shadow here, they have rails, but a majority of people use these for competition. So competition shooters don't really utilize the rail at all. So they kind of just do away with the rails, and they have non-railed versions, right? So I think the non-railed version of like the Shadow 2 is, I don't know if it's still called the Shadow 2, but I know there's a version called the Tac Sport, and that one does not have a rail on it. It looks very similar to this, and people love those guns. So I do like the fact that they are catering to a lot of different individuals that have a different flavor of different guns that they like. For me, I do like an accessory rail, especially if it's going to be a gun that I'm going to potentially carry, because I always want to have a light on my firearm. So moving on back on the frame, you do have a just standard like 1911 style trigger guard. And moving on back inside of that trigger guard, you do get a very, very nice 1911 style aluminum and, I guess, nicely cut out trigger. So this trigger is coming around. Let me give you guys a trigger pull really quick. Mine is saying it's around 4 pounds. I'll put that a little bit closer on video for you guys so you guys can see. Just add that one. But it is a very nice 4-pound pull. Hardly any take up there. And the reset is also extremely nice. So I am really, really glad that CZ or Dan Wesson put a 1911 style trigger on there, because I was able to get extremely fast splits, and I'm used to shooting 2011, so it was extremely familiar for me to adjust myself to this trigger here. And speaking on the trigger and the hammer and a couple other parts in here, they are interchangeable with actual 1911. So you could put basically a 1911, different style 1911 trigger on here, and a different style hammer, and there's something else in here that I'm forgetting. But you can swap some of these parts onto 1911s as well, which I think is pretty cool, because 1911s are extremely common, and if you want to swap stuff in here, then you can go right ahead. Now moving on back, you do get a left-sided slide release or slide lock. It is very nice to hit that. I don't have to do the whole adjustment that I usually have to do on a 2011 or a 1911. Usually on those guns, the slide release sits so far forward where when I insert the magazine, I have to hit it with this thumb here. But I did not have an issue with adjusting my grip a little bit and doing that there. It's a little bit stiff because I don't have any rounds. But basically when I insert it, I can hit that with my with my right hand thumb, which is really nice to me that I'm able to do that, because I'm able to do way faster reloads that way. But moving on back a little bit more, this is the more unique part. This whole gun is pretty unique in itself, but this part here is a little bit unique to me personally. So this portion here, if you can see that it's like cut out where the serial number is, that is actually the serialized part. That whole unit there does come out, the serialized part, and you could swap that to different frames. So I know this is still new for Dan Wesson and CZ, but it'd be cool to get a lot of different frame options and maybe even do something like a Flux Raider type thing where you can insert this into like a chassis system. I think that'll be cool, but that's probably gonna be way down the road. So as of now, that is very, very cool that they're doing that. So those of you that do potentially get one of these, let's hope that they make frames or different frames for it, so that way you don't have to buy a whole new firearm, or you don't have to go through an FFL. You can just buy the frame and get it shipped directly to your door. Now moving on back, you do only get one left side safety. I think that's a little bit unfortunate, because I think any 1911 or 2011 that comes out nowadays, especially for a price point like this, should come with an ambidextrous safety. But right now you only get one. I did talk to CZ. Like I said, I talked to them and asked them all these questions. They said they are going to come out with accessories down the road. So definitely look out for that if you want to have an ambidextrous safety on there. Also, the safety is very nice to activate and deactivate. Didn't have an issue, even though it's smaller than basically your 1911 or the DWX or all these CZs here on the table. It is very easy to use. Now moving on to the hammer, you just get a standard skeletonized hammer that's very reminiscent of like the CZ Shadow or Accu Shadow here. It's a little bit different than the Shadow 2. The Shadow 2 is more like a triangle shape. So I would say that it's more of a CZ Accu Shadow, or yeah, that type of styling there. Now moving on down, the beaver tail is very similar to a 1911 style beaver tail. On the Accu Shadow or the SPO1 and the Shadow 2, they're very thin. On the DWX, it's a lot thicker. I don't mind them on either one. It's just, it's keeping my hand at a nice high position and without letting me get that slide bite, right? Now lastly, the grip. The grip is very reminiscent to the Shadow 2. On the original Shadow, or the SPO1, it's nicely curved and flush from the front and the rear. But on the Shadow 2, it has more of a little hump to it. So if I bring the Shadow and the Shadow 2, you can see that it's a little bit more of a hump on the back. And on the DWX Compact, you do have that little hump there. And also the texturing on it isn't aggressive at all, but it's not where it's gonna slip out from your hands. I was shooting this all day, and I really like that texturing, especially on these side panels, and these panels are by Henning Group. Also on the back of the grip, you do get this like panel here. This is very similar to 1911s, where you can take that off and it exposes your leaf springs underneath that to basically, that's your adjustments for the hammer, the trigger pull, and all that good stuff. You can look up how a 1911 gets taken apart. I don't know if there's any disassembly videos on the DWX specifically, so go ahead and just check that out, because I'm not gonna really pull stuff apart on YouTube at this point in time, because I don't really know the rules really, so I just know that you can't do like gunsmithing on here. So now moving on to the mag release. The mag release is basically the same thing as like the CZ Accu Shadow or the CZ Shadow original. The newer Shadow 2 has a different styling of mag release, because you're able to put a extension on there. Magazines, I did not mention that these magazines are the CZ75 magazines. On the DWX full size, that one uses the PO9 magazines, I believe. And this one uses CZ75 magazines. I like the fact that I'm able to use CZ75 magazines just because I have a lot of CZ75 mags and I hardly have any P09 mags, but the P09 mags will not fit into this one here. I'm not sure why they didn't stick with just one magazine type for the DWX series. But if they did stick with one, I would choose the 75 mags over the P09 mags. I'm guessing that they went with these mags because they're a little bit thinner. So I guess if you're gonna go with a carry gun, you want it to be as thin as possible, so why not put thinner mags? But I just wish they would have stuck with one magazine between the two DWX models. And also to mention, with the magazines, I can fit the longer CZ75 mags into them. So you get a little bit of extension on there. I do have like some 30 rounders or 30 something rounds, but like that 18 rounder could definitely fit in there. Alrighty, so that about does it on the details of the DWX. I did go out and shoot 1,000 rounds, and within those 1,000 rounds I had 0 malfunctions. It was extremely nice to shoot. For a gun this size, it was very smooth, very light recoiling. And with that trigger, I was able to get extremely fast splits, like I said before. It was just a very familiar gun. I'm a huge fan of the 75 series, SPO1, and the Shadow 2. And just grabbing this gun and shooting with that trigger, it's like a dream come true when it comes to a firearm. This has a blend of everything I like in a firearm. So very reliable within those 1,000 rounds. It shot extremely nice. The mag well is nice and opened up for me to do some really nice reloads. But aside from that, the only downsides that I'm seeing right now is the lack of accessory rail, which I'm not too bothered by just because I did see another version of it and I know it exists, so let's just hope it comes out sometime soon or hope it's already out by this time. Next thing is 100%, I believe they need to be coming out with optic cuts. I think that guns should all come with optic cuts straight from the factory. It's 2023, they need to be coming with optic cuts, guys, but it is what it is. Last downside is the lack of ambidextrous safety there. I did talk with CZ and I mentioned this stuff and they did inform me on a, I guess an inside scoop. I can't say too much about it, but just all I can say is don't be too bummed out that there's a lack of these features here. And overall, it's just a great little shooter, and I think it'd be a pretty sweet carry gun if you're into carrying a full metal 1911 style CZ hybrid. So what do you think about the new DWX Compact? Do you think that it's worth to get as a backup for your DWX full size, or have you been wanting to carry your DWX full size and just wanting it in a little bit smaller package? I think Dan Wesson did a really good job on making this hybrid gun and making it fully functional at that. Usually when a company comes out with something a little bit out there like this, it's not really a good gun, but this one was reliable for me. I'm going to get the DWX full size in my hand and directly compare that to this one here and see what the major differences are, because I know the grip is going to be one major change. If you're looking at this one here and looking at the DWX full size, it is a little bit of a different design from what I see, but I want to get it in my hands and actually compare the two. So you're going to have an update video on this one along with the Dan Wesson full size or DWX full size, and I'm going to do a direct comparison between the two. But other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around. I appreciate you all. Love you all. Catch you in the next one.